Hello my darlings and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, hello and welcome. My name is Despina. You can just call me Desi for short, I don't mind. It's so good to be back. I love recording stuff for you guys. I've been getting a lot of feedback and I really appreciate it. My goal with this channel was to educate people on how to better their lives. So I just want to quickly mention that my podcast, the Despina podcast, is now on Spotify. I feel so proud. And we are now in season 2. So season 2, episode 2 is now live. I will link that down below. I would really appreciate if you could give that podcast a listen and tell your friends about it. Let's move into this video. So in this video, it's part 2 of my chat with Danny Matranga. If you don't remember, I did a video with him about a week ago, and this is part 2. So Danny Matranga is a real no BS personal trainer. Now, as you know, the fitness industry is saturated with PTs, and the majority of them, I have to say, are 1, they're not qualified, 2, they do more harm than good, and 3, they give out bad advice and they can actually make people sick. So in this video, which is part 2, we spoke about some very interesting topics, but we primarily focused on fat loss. So the quickest way to lose fat and what that quickest way is, very interesting. And why is resistance training the most efficient for fat loss? Why is that? Then also Danny took me through why intermittent fasting may not be the best idea for you. Now, it's worked for me. I got a little baby hair situation happening. It's worked for me. I've been intermittent fasting for about 1.5 years, and I find that my concentration levels and my sleep and even weight loss has improved drastically, but that's just me. So without giving away too much, we're gonna get into this video, but please hit the subscribe button, the bell button, and the like button if you enjoyed this. And as usual, I hope you learned a thing or two. I love you all so much. Let's go. Let's talk about fat loss and weight loss in particular. In your opinion, what is the best way to lose that excess fat quickest?
So I would say if your main goal was losing fat, you would want to first streamline your nutrition. You need to be sure that you're in a calorie deficit. That's going to facilitate fat loss. If there is a deficit of energy, your body is going to have to create that by mobilizing fatty acids. And slowly but surely, if you remain in a calorie deficit, you will lose weight. That's going to be the primary driver. As far as how you can expedite that or speed that along with exercise, I tend to recommend focusing on resistance training, which a lot of people are like, wow, that's interesting. You would think cardio would be a better choice because colloquially, anecdotally, you will hear cardio referenced as being better for fat loss. And people talk about it like that all the time. And when people want to lose weight, they'll often say things like, oh, got to do some cardio. And cardio is great. It's excellent. And you should include it in your fat loss program. But I think the majority of your exercise time should be spent on building lean muscle. That will help you maintain some of the metabolic or stave off some of the metabolic impacts of weight loss. So as you lose weight, you will see some metabolic downregulation. And that's very normal. The best thing you can do to fight that is just to maintain muscle, keep lifting, and don't overdo it, right? And something like weightlifting, I find is very reasonable. And if you train within a safe volume, you're not going to probably overdo it training sometimes 4 or 5, even 6 days a week. Although I tend to recommend people stay somewhere around 4 to 5 days of lifting, sprinkling in up to 120 minutes of cardio a week. I would say 90. If you're doing things like sprinting, right, that's very different. But if we're talking about things like walking, incline walking, jogging, going on the stairs, low intensity, I think you could go between 90 and 180 minutes per week, which is a lot. You could really develop your aerobic health doing that, but I would keep that very low intensity. The more intense you like your cardio, like if you really like HIIT, I might not do more than 30 minutes a week because that's a lot of work. So
Really?
Cardio is what you add in on top. Generally, the less intense, the more I think you can get away with.
Very interesting. And somewhat controversial. All right. You
Yeah.
mentioned resistance training. So why is it so beneficial? And there is quite a few people that say that it's bad for your joints. So what's your take on that?
Okay, so I think that resistance training is a really great option for fat loss because when you're in a calorie deficit, you're going to lose tissue, not just body fat, mostly body fat, hopefully, if we do things right, but you're also going to lose some muscle. And you want to maintain as much muscle as possible. Muscle is a really beneficial tissue. The more you have, generally, the more calories you're going to burn at rest. But even more importantly, muscle is very important for your bone health. The two are very closely correlated. And you want to have muscle as you age so you stay strong and functional and you're more resilient to things like injury when you have muscle. And so one of the things that's really important to do when you're in that deficit is give your muscle a reason to stick around. And lifting weights is the best reason you can give it. That sends a very strong signal to your body to, hey, hold on to this muscle, which is probably going to enhance the calories burned from fat, right? Because what your body's going to be like, I'm going to prioritize maintaining this protein, this muscle. So let's mobilize more fat. Exercise will do that. Sprinkling in cardio will help. You'll burn more calories. Um, but if you only do cardio, you're probably not going to maintain very much muscle because it's not as demanding. And unfortunately, what you might find is that if you try to lose weight only doing cardio, you don't have a lot of muscle and you end up looking a little skinny fat, people will often call it.
Skinny fat. Yeah.
And it's kind of an unfortunate, I think it's kind of mean, but it's definitely a thing. I've been doing this long enough to tell you that if somebody loses weight and really only does cardio, they have a very different physique than somebody who does a lot of weight training. And so I recommend doing that. As far as it being bad for your joints, I do think it's important to acknowledge that every body is different. Some people are shorter, some people are taller, some people are more limber or flexible than others. And if you are super tall and have terrible ankle mobility, you're not going to squat the same way like me. I'm only 5'10" and I have
Mm,
insane ankle mobility. And so I can squat really, really low because I have short femurs and I'm not a tall person. And if you were really, really tall and you were like, I'm going to squat like that guy, that might be bad for your joints. But if you're training within ranges of motion that allow you to position the weight where it's supposed to be, create output and force, get stronger over time, build muscle, you're going to only bolster your resilience against things like joint related
okay.
degradation or decline.
Okay. I personally have terrible joints.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to injure myself quite easily
Yeah.
lifting weights, but I'm
Yeah.
tall. I'm 5'9".
Yeah. And
Um,
so that's taller for a woman, and taller lifters often struggle if they
yeah,
select exercises that aren't advantageous for their limb length. And one of the
yeah.
ones is that can be problematic are things like squatting and deadlifting, which are
Can't do those.
they're
Can't do
such
those.
rite of passage exercises because they are very effective. But there might be a better alternative for you. Maybe you would do better with something like a Romanian deadlift or some form of lunge or leg press that positioned you more efficiently than a squat and a barbell deadlift. But we get married to these exercises, but I really think in truth, you can tailor the exercise selection to the individual, how they are
Okay.
built and how their body responds.
And I'm assuming that's where a good personal trainer comes in.
Bingo. That's really like I said, the difference between me and some of the people that aren't maybe as integrous in this space or aren't delivering information that is sound in this space is they're just not paying attention. You'll figure it out really fast. Something's not working here. I'm not going to keep trying to fit a square hole or a square peg in a circular hole. Like, this exercise is bothering this client and I'm not going to maintain their business if I keep hurting them. So I need to figure something else out. If you don't care, like I said, that's one of the biggest problems. If you don't care, then you're just going to keep trying to fricking jam that circular block into the square hole. It's never going to go. And you're going to be like, all right, my client left, but it was all their fault because they didn't want to squat. And it was like, buddy, the squats were bothering the client's joints.
Yeah.
Maybe you should have instead opted for a different quad exercise and strengthened her posterior chain, his or her posterior chain. But
Mm,
those are things that happen when you're concerned with doing a good job. Those are lines of thinking that happen when you're operating from the right place. And that's in my opinion why a lot of trainers don't make those choices. And that's, I think, something that you would see from trainers who really cared and had been doing it for a while.
Spot on. Yeah. Well, look, if I were there, I'd get you to train me, but you're not. So, oh wells. Um, what's the quickest way to lose belly fat? It's probably the biggest concern people have.
Yeah, totally. Of the areas where people tend to be the most subconscious about their stored body fat, the midsection is usually at the top of the list. And unfortunately, there's nothing you can do to directly spot reduced fat in a practical manner. There are some people who will show you some research that goes, well, hey, look, if you do this, like you do these sit-ups in between these bouts of cardio, we might mobilize more fatty acid from that area. Well, we're not so sure about that. But what we are sure about is that if you're in a calorie deficit, you're going to lose fat. Where exactly that fat comes off, unfortunately, has to do with a lot of things outside of our control. Generally speaking, like hormones and genetics.
Mm.
Hormones tend to dictate to some degree where it is that we store our body fat. So if you think about women's body fat patterns, they tend to vary quite a bit from men's body fat patterns. When women go through puberty, they're more likely to store body fat on the breasts, hips, and thighs. And men typically tend to spread the fat around, and it kind of aggregates to the midsection around middle age. And women's body fat patterns actually change as they age. And menopausal body fat patterns or postmenopausal women have very different body fat patterns than women who have yet to go through menopause. So hormones do play a small role in that. I've heard, and I'm not entirely sure where the literature is on this, but at one point we were pretty sure that things like stress played a big role on body fat accumulating in the midsection. But I don't want to speak to something I'm not entirely sure about. And then lastly is genetics. And if you are predisposed to have a lot of your fat aggregate on your butt, then it's going to end up on your butt. And you might be like, hey, I'm awesome. Like my fat went where everybody wants their fat to go. And then like the next 99 people are like, well, isn't that fucking nice? Because that's not where my body fat went. Like everybody has a genetic predisposition to store it differently. And like when you look at families, a lot of times you go like, wow, they all have the same hips, or wow, they all have the same arms. A lot of that stuff has to do with where we store fat. And so genetics and hormones play a role, but the only thing you can do reliably is be in a deficit, be in a calorie deficit, exercise, get good sleep, manage your stress. And I guess you could say like try to do things that would help you just stay healthy in general. I think if you're healthier and well nourished, it'll make the um, fat loss that much easier, and hopefully you'll maintain some muscle.
Good idea. Okay. Um, what's your view on intermittent fasting? Does it work? Does it not work? Is it bad for you? Is it good for you?
Yeah, so let's talk about like intermittent fasting for fat loss, right? Because there's a lot of rationale behind fasting for different health implications. And I do think that there's some stuff there, but that's a box that I don't want to open today. I would say that intermittent fasting for fat loss is probably beneficial for people who do better eating during a certain time of the day. And they can easily skip breakfast because maybe they have a super busy morning and things are really hectic. But all that's happening when we're doing intermittent fasting is we're shortening the window inside which you can eat. And if you eat 1,500 calories in an 8-hour window, or you eat 1,500 calories in a 15-hour window, you're probably going to lose the same amount of weight. So that's the thing is, if it's easier for you to eat that 1,500 calories when you restrict it to only eating afternoon, and you're like, okay, cool, I feel like I have more food in the back half of the day, I don't have a big appetite in the morning, so eating breakfast was kind of sucky, like then maybe you do really well with it. But if you are active across the day and you get hungry, and maybe you have insulin sensitivity that you burn through blood sugar fast, and you're like, oh, I need to maybe eat a little more frequently to feel like I'm on my where I want to be, then I wouldn't recommend it. And I think it's, as far as fat loss goes, it's a thing that you can do, but I don't think it's going to improve your fat loss in any meaningful way.
Okay, that's interesting because I would disagree with you. Intermittent fasting works very well for me.
That's great.
Um, I don't know why, but I feel as though it's different for everyone. But
Yeah.
I definitely agree that those people that, what did you say, they're insulin sensitive?
So I would imagine that if you were fasting
Mm,
and you had insulin sensitivity issues, having a smaller eating window would help. But if you
that's me.
were super insulin sensitive
Mm,
and you were like so this would be for somebody who was more insulin resistant, maybe the smaller eating window would be beneficial. It's hard to
yeah.
say. It's hard to say. And it's definitely not definitive. I'm not an endocrinologist. Talk to your doctor, blah, blah, blah. But I would say that if you were somebody who was constantly burning through, burning, like you do really well with carbohydrate and you put it away fast, you might do
Mm.
better eating more frequently. So if you don't, that little break in your eating window would definitely help improve your insulin sensitivity over time.
Mm. God, I'm so jealous of those people that just eat all the time.
Yeah, and you can still lose fat
Ah,
in a calorie deficit regardless of your sensitivity to insulin. It does play a role. I don't want to
mm,
speak to how much of a role that is because I think you already hit on it. It varies
mm.
person to person.
All right. Speaking of such, would you recommend training empty stomach or with some food in your
So
stomach?
it depends on when you like to train and how quickly you can digest food. I tend to train in the morning on an empty stomach,
You
not because
do?
I think it's
Okay.
optimal, but because if I eat within an hour of training, I feel the food sitting in my stomach and it really impedes my ability to get a good
Yeah.
workout. There's something called gastric emptying, and it's the rate at which you can basically empty the stomach and get everything out of there. And I don't like feeling like I have oatmeal sitting in my stomach while I'm training at 5 in the morning because I have a busy schedule and that means I have to get up early to train. So I do a little bit better when I train fasted. If I'm going to train in the afternoon, I love to have a meal. I feel like I get a great pump. I feel like I'm really well fueled. However, I want to make sure that I give that food at least 90 minutes to digest so it's not sitting heavily in my stomach. As far as making meaningful progress, I think whichever allows you to train hard and kick your butt in the gym is the better option for you.
Yeah. Okay. What's the best way to build a booty? I'm
Yeah.
talking like, would you up your protein intake? Would you do hip thrusts or squats or a combo or
Yeah. So I would say that I think without a doubt, the best way to build the glutes, you want to be in a calorie surplus, a small calorie surplus. You can build muscle in a deficit. You can even build muscle at maintenance, but it's not optimal. So I think one of the things we want to focus on is, hey, what can we do to position ourselves physiologically to build the most muscle possible? What can we do? Well, giving ourselves a little more fuel than we need is going to let us train hard and it's going to let us recover. Inside of that surplus, you hit on one thing. You're going to want to have some protein. You're going to want to have enough protein to recover. Second thing is you're probably going to want to have some carbs because that's your training fuel. And when you're lifting weights, you're doing a lot of work that's glycolytic or semi glycolytic, meaning you're burning carbohydrates. So having some is helpful and it can actually help you with um, initiating muscle repair. So carbohydrates are what we would call protein sparing. So they'll help you recover from your workouts, which is awesome if you're training hard. What movements should you do? Squats, lunges, hip thrusts, Romanian deadlifts, glute focused back extensions. There's so many different exercises you can do. A lot of times I'm asked, what is the best exercise for glute training? What is the best exercise to build my glutes? And I often say, if you really gave a shit about building any muscle, you'd do more than one movement for it, wouldn't you? Right? So you're going to thrust, you're going to deadlift, you're going to lunge, you're going to hammer the leg press, you're going to freaking smash out some kettlebell swings and some Romanian deadlifts and get strong. Maybe even do some band work if you like the band work or cable work to hit those lateral sides of the glutes, or lateral sides of the hips, the glute med. But overall, you're going to do a variety of different things. You're going to train to get strong. And I would recommend getting strong on the squat, the Romanian deadlift, getting very proficient with Bulgarian split squats and lunges. And those are kind of my go-tos.
okay. Um, as a coach, what's your best piece of advice for those who are a bit scared, like they're beginners to this whole losing weight, lifting weights thing. Like what would be your best piece of advice for them?
Yeah. So one thing I've noticed with this group of people is they're very, very concerned with what other people think when they start this
Oh,
journey. That's a
spot
very,
on.
very common place. I know I felt super intimidated when I went to the gym for the first time. And I even felt like super intimidated communicating to people that I wanted to change my body to build muscle. I was like, I don't want my friends to know I want to get more muscular. They're going to think I'm weird. And this is when I was in high school, but still, like, people are afraid of other people's judgment. And I think that when you have made the decision that you want to change your body, either the way it moves, the way it looks, or the way it feels, I think other people are going to find that inspiring. And I think going for it and just doing it, you're going to encounter a lot less judgment than you might expect. And anybody who has anything to say or make or anybody who's got anything negative to say to you, it's usually a reflection of their own shortcomings. And so if you're intimidated to get started, I think, just knowing that we all started somewhere. It's super tacky to say, but we all started somewhere. A lot less people are going to judge you and a lot more people are going to cheer you on, and you're totally worth it. So you might as well go for it. And the very people that you're probably the most concerned with their opinion or what they might think or what they might say are probably going to be the people that are the most inspired when you get to where you want to be.
Yeah, spot on. Where can people find you?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram. My handle is danny.matranga. That's kind of the gateway to everything. My website is www.coachdannymatranga.com. And the thing I'm working on the most right now is my podcast, which is the Dynamic Dialogue podcast with Danny Matranga. And that is a lot of fun. And I think that there is a lot of educational stuff on there. So if you got something out of the conversation that we had today, that's something that you would really enjoy.
All right. Perfect. As a parting question, what do you think is the biggest misconception out there in the fitness industry currently?
That anything can happen quickly. Nothing fucking happens fast. Anything that you're going to want and that you're going to be proud of when you get it doesn't happen fast.
Okay, so slow progress is the key, yeah?
Yeah, it's the only kind of progress.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Is there anything that you want to talk about that we have not covered?
No, I had a great conversation today.
All right, perfect. All right. Well, I gotta go. Sorry, but I really
Perfect.
want
Thank
to
you.
thank you for coming on here. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good one.
All right, see ya. Bye.
Bye.